What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. Today I've got an update to my Mitsurugi Pure deck list. Mostly because I don't have anything lined up. And I've been gone for a month. Sorry. I'm just gonna go straight into it. I know the legendary decks came out recently, and to be honest, this is probably how I would build the deck regardless of the legendary decks that came out. This is going to have cards, I believe, that are not in the legendary decks. So this is a direction you could take it after purchase if you decide to go the route of purchasing 1 or 3 of the legendary decks and wanting to do just some simple upgrades. Starting off, I've got 2 copies of Ame no Murakumo no Mitsurugi. The reason why I'm playing 2 is because we now have more room because Habakiri is at 1. Which, speaking of, we are playing the 1 Habakiri. Still, like, your best 1-card starter. Or just being able to E-telly a body out of the deck and get its effect and have it trigger off the board so it dodges stuff like Valor, Imperm, and other things that stop monster effects on the field. Then we've got 1 Futsu. I still think Futsu is probably underrated as a Mitsurugi card, a once per chain revive, and also being able to search a card and has the same floating effect that the other 2 have. Really strong. Then I've got 3 copies of Aramasa. Sorry, been a while since I've said these names. But I'm playing 3 Aramasa just because typically you only play 1 if not 2. But that's if you have the 3 Habakiri. So since we only have 1 Habakiri, I want to see it as often as possible. So Aramasa does use up our normal summon to be able to grab the Habakiri from the deck, and then we can proceed to combo. But I feel like you don't have to play 3. I'm just choosing to play 3 to maximize on 1-card starters. Then we have 1 copy of Kusanagi and 1 copy of Saji. Just because I don't think these need to change at all. These can stay as one-ofs in the deck. You really only need 1 of each of them. So that's going to be it for the Mitsurugi monsters. However, the spell trap lineup does get a little extensive. Since they didn't hit prayers, we've got 3 copies of prayers. You know, I literally have the deck built online. What am I saying? I should have checked to see if prayers was actually hit. I'm just dumb. I built the deck online and then decided to throw it together in paper. We've got 3 copies of prayers because, again, maximizing our 1-card starters. I've got 2 Magatama, not 1. I would play. I only play 2 because it gives you extra removal, as well as, you know, a quick effect ritual summon. So that's why I'm playing 2. You can definitely cut 1 of these in favor of an extra hand trap or an extra piece of non-engine, and it'll be fine. This is also a card that you can easily cut 1 of out while siding and still have that flexibility, and is a really good search target if you've already gone through your prayers for the turn. And if you already have drawn your 1 of Mitsurugi Ritual, again, you still only need 1 of this. It's not really a 1-card starter, so 1 of it is fine. Then we have 1 copy of Mitsurugi Mirror, just because obviously I'm going to be playing extra ways to find my 1-card starters. I'm pretty sure you guys can guess where that's going. And then 1 copy of Mitsurugi Sacred Boundary. It gives your ritual monsters protection against extra deck monster effects, and it also lets you cycle 4 of your Mitsurugi cards from graveyard back into the deck, and if your opponent controls a monster, you can force them to sacrifice something. And then we have the 1 Great Purification, just because, again, you really only need the 1. Mitsurugi is really good at self-containing itself and keeping itself constantly in a resource advantage loop. So that's going to be it for the Mitsurugi cards. There's only 18 Mitsurugi cards in the deck. So that means we have 22 slots for hand traps and other non-engine. Then we have one copy of Mitsurugi Night Sword Serpent because he's basically an honorary Mitsurugi. If you're playing Mitsurugi without this card, you're just playing the deck wrong. Then we've got 3 copies of Pre-Preparation of Rites. This is another 1-card starter. It finds Habakiri from the deck as well as the Mitsurugi Mirror. Pretty solid. And then we've got 1 Called By. I have forgone the cross out just because even though I am playing like a whole slew of hand traps, there's not a lot of hand traps that like just straight up kill the deck. I would really only play cross out if there are hand traps that kill the deck and I want to maximize insulation cards. So I'm only playing the 1 Called By because nothing straight up murders this deck other than Droll and Lockbird, but that's at 2. Who cares? Then I've got 3 copies of Mulcharmy Foolos. Again, this is why I said if you're going the Legendary Dex route and you pick up 3, I'm maxing out on Fua just because best one. Then we've got 3 copies of Ash Blossom. You know, had a stroke. Sorry. Mainstay for anti Mulcharmies. Then we've got 3 copies of Ghost Bell. This is mostly for the mirror, but it's also for any graveyard shenanigans going on right now, which there's a lot of that. So Bell is just really good because we are in a graveyard heavy format. Might as well. Then I've got 2 copies of Effect Veiler to help with Draco Tail, specifically to hit the Arthalion. And 2 copies of Droll and Lockbird because, well, it's semi-limited for a reason. You gotta play it. We're also... dropped my card because I can't seem to fucking not drop my cards today. 1 copy of Dimension Shifter because this deck actually plays really well in Shifter because they don't care about being in the graveyard. They just care if they were tributed. So if you Shifter and then start tributing your guys, they're still going to come back, and they're just going to come back from the Banish. And then we have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Again, something to help with Draco Tail and some other problematic decks in the format. And that is going to be it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, which the extra deck has so many flex spots. There's a lot of things you can change around and, you know, do differently. We have 2 copies of Lizardos. 2 copies of the Haggard Lizardos because, you know, Reptile Link 2 can modulate monster attack pretty good. And if he banishes a reptile, you get to draw an additional card. So he's a Link 2 that draws you a card at like the worst case scenario. And then I've cut back on the Ragnarika links I was playing, but I am still playing 1 copy of Ragnarika Selene Snapper because it banishes up to 2 of the Ragnarika trifecta, which is reptile, plant, and insect. You can banish up to 2 of those from your graveyard and destroy spell traps your opponent controls equal to the number you banished. So, and since it's up to 2, you can banish 1, pop 1 if they only have 1 back row. You don't have to banish 2 and pop 2. And just a 2600 link 3, so if you go like Lizardos, draw a card, draw into an extender, you can make this and pop 2 back row by banishing the Lizardos from the graveyard. And 1 other card, which really sick. Then I'm playing 1 copy of M-Frame, just because... Even though we're not playing the Zerol, I'm just going to say that now, not playing Cosmic Slicer Zerol, this card is still good because when it's killed, it revives revives non-linked reptiles from your graveyard equal to the number of monsters your opponent controls with A counters. So if your opponent goes Battle Phase, declares an attack into this, you go Quick Effect, pitch a reptile, distribute A counters to your opponent's board. And you can do this in the damage step because it's just a regular quick effect. You can pitch, distribute like 3 or 4, probably 4 A counters onto the board, and put it on like 3 or 4 monsters, depending on what your opponent's board looks like. and then they kill this, you get 4 non-link reptiles out of your graveyard back. And now all of a sudden you have a board presence your opponent has to break through again. That is like in a grindy scenario where, you know, the game's gone long, which doesn't really happen. But, you know, then we've got the standard 2 Dynamondo because, well, if you're a ritual deck, you got to be playing Dynamondo. And however many you decide to play, personal preference. I'm also on the 1 Reptilian Echidna, helps with pushing for lethal. It's another link 2 on summon, makes something's attack 0. Yeah, I mean, this deck doesn't really need the help for lethal pushes, but it's a generic reptile link 2. Then I've got the IP into the SP, and then I've also got an access code talker back here, because if you have the bodies, you can then convert your Selene Snapper into a access code, make it 53, and then it can pop like 2 cards, maybe 3, and swing in for 53. Really strong, your opponent can't respond to it. So I think a lot of the flex spots are like the Reptilian. So these 2 cards you can definitely flex out. This you can, or the Alien you can flex out, and 1 Dynamondo you can flex out, and maybe the access code. If you want to change up some of the extra deck stuff, those are some of the flex spots, and then obviously these next 2, or everything beyond here, is all you can do with it whatever you want. If you want to play like a branded package to play the Fallen and the Virtuous as removal, you can do that, and you can make 3 of these next 5, any of these next 5 slots. Branded fusions, or branded fusion monsters, but I'm playing 1 Exciton Knight just because we do end up with 2 random level 4 bodies. I would be playing a Gallant Granite instead or alongside. I just don't own a Gallant Granite, I don't think, and I'm not going to bother sitting down for like 3 hours digging through my stuff, but just know there would be a Gallant Granite in here, probably over either Access Code or the Selene Snapper, or probably the Echidna. One of those 3 cards. And then we also have a Typhon, just because, you know, this is another one. I could also see playing Gallant Granite over this instead, which, I mean, fair. And then you can main deck a single copy of Nibiru, so that you can always end with a Nibiru in the hand. And then we have our super poly targets in Garura, Mud Dragon, and Predaplant Trifioveridum. I know, weird name. This is in here specifically for Malice. I don't know if they typically end on 3 bodies, but if they do, that's cool. But if they don't, I mean, you just summon one of your guys, attempt to activate its effect. If they, like, hand trap, you, in response, super poly your 1 dark guy and 2 of their dark guys into this 3k summon negate. Because why not? This could also be a Starving Venom. This could also be your Gallant Granite, and you could just play the 2 super poly targets. These are the 3 that I'm choosing to play just because I like Trifioveridum and I want to see it do well. And I know it's really only good in a Malice, so it's kind of a dead card in the extra, but you don't really need the extra deck for this deck. So that's why the extra deck is super flexible. And that's going to be it for the extra deck and the main deck. Moving onward to the side deck, we have 1 singular copy of Mitsurugi Wosu. Sorry, I keep placing those so far off, and it's because I don't know where my camera actually, like, cuts off. But we have 1 Wosu, just because, you know, board breaker. If you're going second, you're boarding in the Wosu. Then we've got 3 copies of Perulia, again, something you board in when going second. We have 3 Lancia. This is something that you can board in against Malice, because it's an auto win button against Malice. Shifter is an auto win button against just about everything else in the current format. So, and this deck plays well underneath both Lancia and Shifter. It doesn't need to banish, but it can play from the banish. and it doesn't need the graveyard, but it can play from the graveyard, and it kind of prefers to play from the graveyard, but it can still play from, or it can still play from banish. Then I've got 2 copies of Nibiru, and I have 1 Druid Worm, 1 Magnemite, 3 Super Poly, because like I said, Malice kind of auto loses to Super Poly. A couple of other decks currently lose to Super Poly. Another thought I've had for a Super Poly target is Secretarian Dragon, but that's very specifically for Draco Tail and exclusively Draco Tail. And I can't dedicate that specific slot to something that's only going to be live against one deck, where even with Trifio Veridum, I know I said it's specifically for one deck. It can technically be live against other decks as long as they're dark heavy. And that's where my reasoning for running Trifio Veridum over Secretarian as a Super Poly target kind of comes into play. And then the last card is 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. This is the best thing I can come up with. I know that a current regional or high level players list is available for literally $30 right now. MBT Yu-Gi-Oh uploaded either a short or a video, or no, he posted on Twitter about how a champion deck is available for $30. And it was not this exact list, but it was Mitsurugi. So on that note, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.